Well, it's so great to see such a fantastic turnout, and it is my first time to Ireland completely, which is very exciting, and I'm quite sad that I've got to go home tomorrow because I don't really think I'm going to have much chance to see much of it. But anyway, it's great to see you all. Just out of interest, who here has actually heard of or been involved with the Family Education Trust before? Not many of you. Right, so I will just give you a little bit of a background about FET. We are a evidence-based organisation. We don't have any political or faith affiliations at all, although quite a few people who are Christian are involved in us, but we also have other people from other religious backgrounds who support us, who are campaigning towards the same things that we are. So we are, a very wide-based organisation. So we've been around for more than 50 years now. It was a GP called Dr. Stanley Ellison who, more than 50 years ago, he was appalled at what was going on in society in the late 60s, and he wrote a letter to the Times outlining, very sadly, some of the same problems that we're seeing today, the breakdown in society and what he described as the pernicious society, the rise of single parents, the rise of sexually explicit scenes on the BBC and the BBC bias, of which there's no change there. But one of the things that stuck with me from his letter was that he said, "Will the decent men and women in society please stand up?" And they did. And in 1971, FET was formed. So we are a charity, and we are run entirely on voluntary donations. And we offer membership basis that you can join us for just £10 a year. And that gets you our bulletins and priority access to booking at any of our events and various other benefits. So our main cause is that we research and we campaign about family breakdown and the causes of family breakdown. And as you've heard from Calvin and from Tony tonight, the reason that we do so is that the family is the basic unit of society, and that so much of society is built from the family unit. And no matter how bigoted and unpopular it is to say now, unfortunately, children still do best, and there is so much evidence there that children still do best when brought up by their married biological parents within a stable and loving marriage. And of course, as we've said, sometimes for reasons beyond control, when parents die or there's abuse involved, sometimes that's not always possible. But that should still be the basic way that we're teaching children, that this should be the way that we want to create families. That should still be a positive message. And from the research that we're doing and from what we hear from parents, it's barely taught at all in schools. Marriage really isn't mentioned. Sex is now taught in RSC lessons. It's all about pleasure. It's about casual relationships, and they're just telling children in schools, just have sex because you want to, whenever you want to, as long as there's consent. That's all that seems to be taught, is consent, but without any framework. And there doesn't even seem to be even so much of a framework about the age of consent, which is something else that we have been campaigning against FET. So in terms of the Equality Act, the 2010 Equality Act, marriage is actually a protected characteristic under the Equality Act. So you wouldn't think so, would you? There seems to be a complete hierarchy of protected characteristics now. And at the moment, transgenderism and LGBTQ plus identity trump everything else. Religious belief, freedom of speech, traditional marriage has pretty much dropped off, which is a sad indictment of where we are in society. So there's so much research has also been done on the damage to children from the breakdown of marriage and traditional families, especially when there's no father figure involved. There's a massive problem especially with boys. A few of you might well have heard of Andrew Tate. People here heard of Andrew Tate? He's a very divisive figure on social media who was arrested a few months ago for his violence towards women and various other things that he's been accused of running sex sort of online sex channels where women have been coerced into doing it. But he has got a huge following on social media, especially amongst young straight boys, because they are not getting the father figures. They're not getting positive role models in schools, and so they're rejecting this all the stuff that we've been talking about. And then when you don't have positive role models, where do you look? You find other role models, because the thing about Andrew Tate is, though he is not a particularly nice character, some of what he says is true. And he's saying to them, actually embrace your masculinity. And whereas in schools and the rest of society, they're saying being masculine is a bad thing. You can't embrace your masculinity. Men and women are interchangeable, boys and girls are interchangeable, but that's not true. As we've heard from Calvin, men and women are fundamentally different, and we should be embracing those differences and how we can work together in the best ways possible while embracing the differences between the sexes. So why is it a problem? Why is Tony talking about traditional marriage? Why are we saying that same-sex marriage is an issue? And so I'll let you into something here, is that actually when I started working for FET, which was about 3 years ago now, when I had the interview, I knew what FET was campaigning about, but I didn't really see much of a problem with same-sex marriage. I really didn't. I've got quite a few gay friends. I thought, why is it a problem? Why can't it be equal? And I actually said that in the interview. I'm surprised they hired me, really. But I have changed my opinion, because when you look into the evidence about it, like Tony said, if you're saying that actually 2 men getting married, 2 women getting married is the same as a man and a woman getting married, you're then also sanctioning the fact that children should be raised within those families. And obviously 2 men and 2 women can't have children. So you're then sanctioning, for say 2 men, you're sanctioning hiring and using surrogates, renting out wombs, which of course, it's always the poorest in society that lose out here, the vulnerable women who could otherwise struggling for money, doing things like that. And it's terrible. We know from adoption sometimes that children still struggle when they've been separated from their mother at birth. And so why would you want to create a situation like this? There's actually I saw something on social media. One of the Kardashians has had a baby by a surrogate, because not only is it gay couples are doing this, but it's very rich celebrity women don't want to get pregnant and give birth. So they're like, oh, no, I don't want to do that. And so they are buying babies. They become a commodity. And one of them was saying how she was really struggling to bond with her baby, because she said, it just seemed so transactional, she said, having just basically taken this baby from the woman who'd given birth in the next room. So, of course, she's not going to be able to bond very well with it, because she's not had the baby in her womb for 9 months, and there was no thought given to the woman who'd just been in labour. So it is, surrogacy is on the increase, and that shouldn't be something that we're encouraging. But also with two women, you're then going for a sperm donor, and then you're having a child where the father's not involved. And we know that fathers matter, mothers matter, fathers matter. A friend I know, she got to 40, and she decided if she'd got to 40 without meeting anybody, she was going to use a sperm donor. And she ended up having twin boys through that. And the group that I was in, the mother and baby group that we were in, we were told we weren't allowed to talk about Father's Day. We weren't allowed to make cards. We weren't allowed to talk about it at all, because we might upset Anne. And I thought, well, why is what she's done, why is that changing the norm for everybody else? Why can't we celebrate fathers? So these things are becoming normalised. Schools are telling children that this is normal. This is normal. 2 mums, 2 dads, they're equally as good as other families, but the evidence shows otherwise. And also, once you accept that that's normal, what next? We've seen in America, we're having thruples are becoming the thing now. If you've not heard of those, that's a threesome in a marriage. There was 3 men in California got married recently, I believe, and they've used a surrogate to have more than 1 child. Polyamory, more than 3. Where does it go? What happens if the church decides it's blessing same-sex marriages? What next? Will it be blessing thruples? Where does it stop? Where does it stop? And actually putting children into these, saying this is normal, normalizing this casual attitudes to sex also increases their risk of becoming abused. So our late director, Norman Wells, who we sadly lost during COVID, he wrote a report called Unprotected, which is available on our website, which was a very in-depth look at the grooming gangs in Rochdale, Rotherham, other towns across the UK. And one of the major problems in this report is the attitude of authorities towards underage sex. So that it was police and social services and doctors who should have known better. They'd got 11 and 12 and 13-year-old girls coming in saying that they were in a consensual relationship with a much older man, and there was no flags being raised. They were just giving them contraceptives, referring them for abortions, and not involving their parents. And this theme is the separation of children from their parents, and it opens them to the risk of abuse. And thousands and thousands of girls have been abused, and it's still going on now. It still happens. The police are still covering it up. So what have we been doing? We've been doing a lot. We've been busy. So a lot of what we do is we raise awareness of what's going on. We're quite active on social media. When I started working for FET 3 years ago, we had less than 40 followers on Twitter. We're now approaching 5,000. So that's going well. So if you're on Twitter, do give us a follow. We've also got a Facebook page, which is increasing as well. Hoping we're going to start an Instagram page. We also have a YouTube channel. And we've just appointed a new director, Peter Williams. He started on Monday. He used to work for the Anscombe Bioethics Society, and he's also worked with the Right to Life organisation, so he's just started. So really hoping that we can commission some new research, and we're actually hoping to work with Claire Page, who we've mentioned, who runs the account called No Secret Lesson Plans, to do some research into the areas that we're looking into. So I've also been on TV, radio quite a lot recently, getting contacted quite a lot, GB News, Times Radio, BBC, all the major newspapers, and also taken part in a documentary about porn, which was interesting, having to watch lots of things and comment on it, which wasn't the most pleasant experience, but it is really important, because if we find this appalling, you've got to be aware of the fact that the average age now for children, especially boys, to first start watching porn is 13, and even younger. And if your child has a smartphone, they can access anything on the smartphone. And no matter how smart you are at putting in various limits so that they can't look at these things, filtering out this explicit content, if your child goes to school, they're going to be able to access any other child's phone who may not have those limits in. So this is something else we're actually campaigning about, is for a ban on smartphones in schools, because evidence shows, actually, it came out this week, that children's IQ actually decreases if they've got smartphones in school, and that device, that internet-enabled device, they can access porn at any point. And we know that porn, not only is it damaging to them, it actually changes the makeup of the brain, and so we're going to end up with a whole generation of young boys who are unable to form relationships with women, because what they see is generally very violent, normalization of anal sex, choking, and this is the kind of stuff that they're teaching them in school is normal as well. Many of these RSC providers actually tell them that watching porn is not harmful, when we know it is. So the combination of what they see on social media and then schools reinforcing what they see in social media as being normal and acceptable, we're in a dangerous situation, because we've got the government who are wanting to stop vaping for children, saying it's actually a health emergency. Well, I would say that smartphones are a health emergency, and it's time that we did something about it. So we've also, we campaign with politicians and lawmakers. I recently gave evidence to the Women and Equalities Select Committee, about the RSC review, which it was quite shocking, to be honest, how biased the members of the committee were. The acting chair, Kate Osborne, she recently gave an interview with Pink News in which she said that we were being disingenuous and that we were sensationalising what's happening in schools despite the evidence in front of her. She just didn't believe it, because she'd got the completely biased agenda. So where is this coming from? Calvin's talked a little bit about that, so's Tony, but part of the reason that it's coming from higher up. We've got the World Health Organization and we've got UNESCO. If you haven't looked at Safe School Alliance, they've got a report into this, and it's basically the same as the PI manifesto. If you remember PI, the Paedophile Information Exchange that was popular in the 70s, they say in their reports, which is being filtered down into governments in the Western world, that children are sexual beings from birth. And this is where this is then filtered down into governments. It then goes into the RSE providers. So this is where it's coming from. This is what they're telling our children, and they're opening them up to abuse from sexual predators. As we've heard, about the fact that we don't have the right to withdraw. In England, you do. You can withdraw them from the sex ed, but as our other speakers have said, it doesn't really make that much difference because they'll get them in the relationship bit, they'll get them in the PHSE, they'll get them in lunchtime LGBTQ clubs. So we've got to actually stand up because they can't cancel us all. And that's the thing, if we actually start to group together, parents start to work together to encourage people to actually stand up, because I talk to people about this all the time. You know, anyone I see in the hairdressers, the builders, everybody I know is appalled by what's happening, but they're too scared to say anything. But if actually people started standing up and saying, this is awful, leave our children alone, then they said they can't cancel us all. If we have like a mass withdrawal from relationship and sex education, what's the government going to do? They've got to do something about it. So the other thing I just wanted to say very quickly, I know I need to wrap up, is that it isn't just schools, unfortunately, it's libraries. You really need to check what your children are getting out of school libraries. I've been in contact with a group called Resistors, who are a group of women's rights activists, and they've been looking into libraries, and we've looked at this a bit about ourselves. And you can go to any library, go into the teenage section, which is in theory from age 13 up. I doubt very much librarians would actually do anything if your 10-year-old got these books out. Be interested to know if they would. So they went into a library in Leeds this week, and this is just a small selection of what they've got. So this book here, I don't know if it's the red one, says this is not a sex book. A lot of these are in school libraries as well. Has a chapter on anal sex. It says, anal sex is a normal activity for all kinds of people, regardless of their sexual orientation. Both men and women can enjoy practicing it. The only thing that's essential is for both of you is to be sure that anal sex is something that you'd like to do. And this is for age 13. There's also a book called Queer Up. That's definitely in my children's school library. I have 3 children, 16, 14 and 12. I've definitely seen this in their school library. And this one talks about, when I started having sex, I didn't know how to have the conversation about it, not just with other people, my friends and sexual partners, but also crucially, I wasn't sure how to have conversations about sex with myself. One of the greatest breakthroughs in understanding my own sexuality and the sex we have is such an important and self-affirming part of our sexuality was coming to think of sex as an ice cream shop. And then it goes to talk about all the different flavours that you should be experimenting with. So another one, Hannah Witten, Doing It. Let's talk about sex. It just talks about various masturbating for under 13-year-olds, and it just goes on and on. So it's just become normalised. Drag in schools, in libraries has become normalised, and it's about time that we started actually doing something about it, because this stuff's basically porn. It's basically porn. They're normalising porn for children, and also when you look at the pride flags as well. When I came to the airport today, actually East Midlands, emblazoned across all the check-in desk was the Pride Progress flag everywhere. And actually, it isn't just the Pride flag anymore. The Progress flag has got the transgender part in it. It's got the plus, and the plus of it includes what they now call minor attracted people, or MAPS. That's in there. And this is where this is all coming from. They're wanting to totally get rid of the age of consent, because if they think children are sexual beings, children can consent to relationships with adults. So this is how serious it is. So what can you do? So ask to see the lesson plans, insist, write to the governors, write to your MP. That's something that we're working on with Women's Rights Network in England, is to get everybody to write to their MP. And even if your MP ignores you, when this sort of stuff comes out, which it will, they can't deny that they've seen it. You've got to write with evidence of what's happening in your own school. So support the decent teachers, because so many of them are getting sacked or banned from teaching for speaking out about this stuff. Show them your support. Become a governor. Get involved. Get screenshots of the material and make sure that you're saving it. Talk to your children. I mean, solidarity there, because I've almost got 3 teenagers now, so I do feel your pain if your children don't want to talk to you. But one thing I would say is helpful in my own kids: talk to them in the car. If you're driving them around, I'm always chauffeuring them around. But when you're side on and it's not so intense and they can't escape, it's a really good opportunity to talk to them. So I do that quite a lot. So limit internet use. And that's hard. Again, my kids do go on the internet, you know, because it's difficult, because this is how they communicate with each other. But limit it. Take the phones off them at bedtime. Don't let them have them in their rooms at night. Set a time when you all, including you put your phones away and you say, we're not going to go on them. Get them outside. Have the family time. Prioritize family time. So these are the things that we can do, and talk to your friends about it. So. But other than that, I would just say it is time to stand up and be counted. The time is now. You know, our children are in danger, and if we all do it, they can't cancel us all.